Hey everybody, I hope all is well and that you're doing great. If you're new here, welcome aboard. My name is Eden, and today I'm going to share with you 5 books that I think will leave you feeling uplifted and hopeful about our future, both as individuals and as a society. I'm making this video today because, and I assume you feel it too, in recent years, it's been really hard to stay optimistic. There's this constant stream of bad news, and it's very challenging to keep a positive outlook on life. And I know how we all feel that leaks into our personal lives as well. So I picked up 5 books. I have only 4 physical copies here. 5 books that each of them is from a different field. So we have history, technology, philosophy, psychology. So everyone can find something they're into. And we can start the new year with some good, hopeful vibes. Before we jump in though, I want to quickly touch on something called the Replication Crisis. If you haven't heard of it, this term refers to a major issue in the world of research where studies, especially in the fields of psychology, sociology, and medicine, can't be reliably repeated or replicated. And that's a problem because replication is what helps confirm that the findings of a study are accurate and not just a one-time thing. That's one of the reasons why when we read articles online, we often come across arguments that conveniently, suspiciously even, cite research supporting their points. But just because research is cited, that doesn't mean it's reliable. Now, why does it matter here? Well, a few of the books I'm going to mention, I think there's a couple of them, draw on research to prove their points, which are often very optimistic points, and some might even say utopian. Sometimes it might seem as if they're saying the sun is shining, the sky is blue, so we should all be happy. But we know for a fact that that's not always the case. However, that's kind of the purpose of these books, to show us another side of what we know, a side that is more optimistic and hopeful. I'll be honest, when I read these 2 books, I had moments when I rolled my eyes a bit because of my skepticism. But eventually I realized that my skepticism only emphasized how deep I am in this cynical realism and how much I need to engage with perspective like these more often, because while we should stay aware of limitations of studies, we can still take away some powerful lessons about the good that exists in the world and what we can do to nurture it. And also we should remember that the point here is not to view these ideas with blind optimism, but to allow them to inspire us to look for the good, to create change, and to imagine what's possible. So keep that in mind as we go on. Critical thinking and a hopeful outlook can absolutely go hand in hand. So the first book on this list, the order is completely arbitrary by the way, is Men's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Honestly, this book is a must-read for so many reasons. But if you're into history and psychology, you're particularly going to like this one because Frankl takes us back to one of the darkest periods in human history, the Holocaust. And he somehow manages to teach us about the power of choice. He shows us that we're not simply the product of our circumstances and that it's never too late to look in the mirror and make a change. Frankl was a professor of neurology and psychiatry at the University of Vienna Medical School, and he developed logotherapy, which considered to be one of the most important contributions to psychotherapy since Freud and Adler. And logotherapy focuses on helping people find personal meaning in their lives. And this book is like a raw gripping masterclass in that. Growing up in Israel, the Holocaust is a significant part of our education. We learn about it extensively in school, and every year there are ceremonies in schools and in local communities where we learn more about it and remember those who lost their lives. Both my grandparents were Holocaust survivors, and ever since I was a kid and heard their stories for the first time, I struggled to process the enormity of it all. I've never watched any of the classic Holocaust movies or read any of the famous books about it, including The Diary of Anne Frank. It was just too overwhelming. But then, during my master's here in Dublin, just a few years ago, was the first time I read a book about the Holocaust. The therapist I had at the time recommended Men's Search for Meaning. At first I was very reluctant, but eventually I read it, and wow, just for this I owe him so much. So obviously no spoilers here. We all know what that time of history was about, and Frankl takes us inside the concentration camps and shares what happened there through the lens of his expertise as a psychiatrist. His descriptions are mind-blowing, and the way he analyzes the psychology of his inmates and himself is just incredible. And what's surprising is how accessible his writing is. It's gripping yet very straightforward, and for the first time I was able to grasp an idea of what happened there, at least in some small way. Every single page moves you, and it's amazing how Frankl managed to take this unimaginable tragedy and turn it into something positive. He shows us that bad things happen, things we can't control, but we can choose how to respond. It's hard to comprehend how he found hope and meaning in his suffering, but he did. It's relatively a short book, but it took me a while to read it because it was hard for me to process the information I read. But by the time I finished it, I was left with so much perspective and with a surprisingly hopeful feeling. Also, at the end, there are practical strategies that I could take and use to find more joy and purpose in my own life. This next book is Humankind by Rutger Bregman, and it was recommended to me by my brother-in-law, and honestly it was such a fantastic recommendation. The book opens with a very intriguing question. If you're on a plane and, God forbid, the plane crashes or there's danger, what would you do? Would you help others or look out for yourself? Now we can do a little experiment here. You can write your answer in the comments and let's see if we can replicate the findings he presents in the book. So if you said you'd help others, which most people do, what do you think the majority of other passengers would do? Would they help or would they panic and look out for themselves? So pause the video here, post your thoughts in the comments, and then come back to learn the results. Personally, I thought that I'd help others, but I also assumed that the majority of the people wouldn't. And every single person I've asked since then thought the same, and maybe you're thinking the same too. So Bregman asks, why is it that we believe we would act kindly, but assume others wouldn't? For his elaborated answer, you'll need to read the book, but here's the bottom line. There's so much evidence to show that we actually live in a world filled with kindness, much more than we realize. So he walks us through history, starting from evolution all the way to more recent events, and uncovers sides of humanity that often get unnoticed and most of us are not even aware of. And as I mentioned in the introduction to this video, yes, he focuses on the good sides, but of course there are bad sides too. Because I tend to approach books from a sort of literary criticism perspective, I cringed a bit at the beginning because some descriptions felt too demagogic. But I quickly shook myself out of that mindset and thought that A, it's nice to know that there are good sides, and B, it's nice to focus on the good sides for a change. So to summarize, it's a hopeful read that really makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves about human nature and how they shape the way we see the world. Plus, it's just incredibly interesting. The next book is The Courage to be Disliked. Apologies, I'm not going to pretend that I know how to pronounce the authors' names, so I'm just going to put their names on the screen so you can have it. And I'll also link all the books in the description box as well. In the realm of psychology, this book really stands out. The book is written in the form of a dialogue, and we basically read a conversation between a philosopher and a young man. The philosopher challenges the young man's beliefs about happiness, relationships, self-worth, and it's all rooted in the principles of Adlerian psychology. What I love about this book is how it breaks down pretty complex ideas like freedom, acceptance, responsibility in a way that it's just super easy to follow. The core message here is that happiness doesn't come from seeking approval or avoiding conflict. Instead, it comes from embracing who we are and focusing on living with purpose. It's a reminder that our past doesn't define our future and that we have the power to change our lives at any moment. And honestly, that's such an uplifting thought that we're not really stuck, no matter how much it might feel that way. As someone who tends to overthink everything and sometimes feels weighed down by the pressure to be perfect, this book was a real eye-opener. It helped me start letting go of some of those burdens and focus on what really matters. And don't get me wrong, there's still lots of work to do, but it gave me this sense of agency, like I'm more in control than I realized. For philosophy lovers, you might like Seneca's Letters from a Stoic. In case you're not familiar with Stoicism, it's a school of ancient philosophy that teaches us how to live a fulfilling life by focusing on what's within our control and letting go of what isn't. And this book is like sitting down with a Stoic philosopher and one of the greatest minds of ancient Rome for a deep conversation about life. It's a collection of personal letters written around 2,000 years ago, and surprisingly, it feels very relevant today. Now, because it's written in a letter format, it's really easy to read and go through because the letters are short and each letter talks about a specific topic. So you can pick it up and randomly read one letter at a time. In these letters, Seneca offers advice to his friend Lucilius on how to live a good, meaningful life. He covers everything from handling adversity to finding peace of mind, how to deal with uncertainty, how to find what truly matters in life, etc. What I love about this book is how practical it is. Seneca's wisdom is grounded and relatable, and as a Stoic, he emphasizes focusing on what we can control, like our thoughts, our actions, our reactions, and letting go of the things that we can't control, like other people's opinions or unexpected events. I haven't even finished the whole collection yet, but I often find myself going back to certain letters multiple times, and every time I revisit it, I discover something new. And honestly, your arsenal of amazing quotes is going to grow a lot with this one. A random suggestion for you. James and I created a sort of routine where we read a letter together on weekends. And then, of course, we analyze and talk about what we read. It's a really nice activity to share with someone, and it makes me feel like we're true philosophers discussing these matters. So if modern life feels overwhelming and you're looking for some perspective, then Seneca's words are like a calming presence. They're practical, thought-provoking, and surprisingly comforting. I don't have a physical copy of the next one because I read it on my Kindle, but if you're into technology and feel a bit uneasy about the rapid rise of AI, or perhaps you're simply curious about where it's all heading, then you might like Scary Smart by Mo Godat. Scary Smart is a book that explores the world of artificial intelligence, but not in a way that's too technical or overwhelming. Instead, Godat takes us on a fascinating journey, really, exploring how AI learns and evolves, the risk it presents, but most importantly, the power we have to shape its future with our individual actions and values. The book opens with a vivid image. Godat asks us to imagine sitting with him by a campfire in the year 2055 as he tells the story of how AI changed everything. However, he can't tell us whether we're sitting there to escape the machines or because AI has liberated us from tedious work and now allowing us to simply enjoy a nice chat by the campfire. From there, he dives into the myths and facts about AI and teaches us both the challenges and the opportunities it brings. What I love about this book is that obviously it's such an interesting topic, but also I love that while it acknowledges the risks, the message is fundamentally hopeful. Godat believes that we have the ability to influence AI, to prioritize kindness, empathy, and collaboration. And he argues that we're not just powerless spectators in this technological revolution, and that our values and actions today actually have a significant impact on the direction AI will take in the future. I see this book as something more than just a book about AI. It's a call to action. It's thought-provoking, empowering, and it's a reminder that change is good if we use it for good. And there's a huge potential here to use and guide AI toward creating a better world. So that's my list of 5 books that I think will leave you feeling inspired and a little more hopeful. And I hope this video has given you some ideas for your next read. And also, if you have any other recommendations of books that made you see the world in a more optimistic light, I'd be happy to know and add them to my never-ending TBR list. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you haven't. It lets me know what kind of videos you're into, and I always appreciate any kind of feedback from you. That's it for now. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.